The path to parenthood isn't always a straight one. For LGBTQ+ parents, it can be especially complex, and too often, our stories go untold. This is Proud Conception. I'm your host, Rachel Bresson, and together we're giving voice to the many ways our families come to be. We're diving into how we build our whānau, raise our little ones, and shape a world where they feel seen, safe, and proud. Kia ora e te whānau, and welcome back to Proud Conception. I feel like I'm finally finding my rhythm with this podcast. Releasing episodes every 2 weeks seems to be a good fit for both me and my guests, and hopefully that cadence feels right for you too. If you haven't already, please hit follow on Spotify or Apple so you'll get notified when new episodes drop, and come join our little corner of Instagram. We're at Proud Conception Pod. I share updates and announce new episodes on there as well. I've been loving the kōrero with guests and listeners over the past few weeks. So many rich conversations about moving beyond the narrow idea of the nuclear family, whether that's straight or queer. And I'm really grateful to those who have reached out with feedback and ideas for future episodes. There is lots in the pipeline, so stay tuned. Today's guest fits beautifully into that theme of thinking bigger than the nuclear family. When queer couples sit down to talk about how they want to grow their family, the first pathways that usually come up are gamete donation or surrogacy, and sometimes adoption. But adoption in Aotearoa is increasingly rare and not always very well understood. Running somewhat parallel to adoption is another pathway, permanent foster care. The reality is that hundreds of children in New Zealand are in need of stable, loving, permanent homes. Permanent foster care is an incredible opportunity and gift to offer those things, but it's also not without its challenges. My guest today speaks openly and honestly about walking that path with his family and the beautiful and intentional way he supported his son through some pretty challenging obstacles. So, today on the pod, we're talking with Marty. The parenting journey for Marty and his husband Mike began many, many years ago, before marriage equality, and continues today with their son Xavier, who is now 18. Together, they've navigated the complexities of the permanent foster care system, or the pathway known as Home for Life. I speak with Marty about the early days with Xavier, the reality of parenting a child with high and complex needs, and the beautiful way Marty and Mike are building extended whānau around Xavier. Beyond parenting, Marty is also the director of Pride Pledge, a social enterprise working with organisations to foster safe and inclusive environments for rainbow employees and customers. While most of our chat is about Marty's personal story, he does share a few insights into what he's seeing professionally in organisations as to how they're supporting rainbow families in the workplace. Marty's story is full of resilience, advocacy, and deep love for his son, his husband, and for the wider rainbow community. I'm so grateful to share his whānau's journey with you. Enjoy. Just a note before we dive in. At Proud Conception, we share these stories from the parent perspective. We're mindful not to tell our children's stories for them or to share information of the kind they should be the first to learn, understand, and own. It's a delicate balance, but our aim is to honour their privacy while still giving space to the power and complexity of queer family building. Because of that, some details may be left out of the parent's story, or there may be parts we don't explore in depth. Either way, I'm sure you'll still find so much to enjoy in the journeys our guests have chosen to share. Kia ora, Marty. Welcome to Proud Conception. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Kia ora, Rachel. Thanks for inviting me on this show.
You are more than
Great
welcome.
to be here.
We are just getting started, so it's my little parental leave passion project. But we're growing, so I appreciate your time in the early days of this podcast.
Oh, it's awesome. Important stories to tell, and a great way to keep active during parental leave.
Yeah, exactly. And you have a very important story to tell, so I'm keen to jump into it. Why don't we start with your rainbow roll call? So who's in your whānau, and tell us a bit about them.
Yeah, sure. So myself, I go by Marty rather than Martin. My pronouns are he, him. I'm dad. My husband, Mike, his pronouns are he, him. He goes by dad. Doesn't get confusing. We'll get there. And our son, Xavier, his his pronouns are he, him, and he turned 18 in March this year. So we've been on the parenting journey for some time. We've had a few pets along the way, but not at the moment. I'm sure that'll come out in the conversation.
Yeah, love it. Like we were just saying before I hit record, you're at the other end of the parenting journey with an 18-year-old, and I'm still in the diapers and lack of sleep stage and all of that. So yeah, keen to glean your wisdom as I venture into the next decade of life. So give me a brief overview of how your family came to be. What kind of paths did you take to grow your family?
When we started, we, had lots of conversations in the early years of our partnership around wanting to be parents. We were, I think, always really aligned that that was something that we wanted to do. So we were pretty lucky. And we were also really lucky that we'd kind of established our careers, and we worked, like heads down, bum up, 12-hour days early in our careers, and kind of like got our kind of big initial chunk of our career behind us before we kind of put our heads up and said, hey, we need to really start thinking about this if we want to do it. So initially we had conversations about surrogacy, and we were exploring that, including options of one of either of our sisters potentially being involved. But at the time, so just to give context, so I'm 49, my husband's 51. We celebrated 30 years together this June.
Wow, congratulations. That's huge.
We're talking these conversations were, almost 20 years ago. The landscape was a bit different. We didn't have marriage equality. We would have just recently got civil partnered, civil unioned. And surrogacy was very, very early. It was complicated. It was either the US or I think might have been India at the time, but complications around having to then re-adopt your own child, having to have a mother and father on the birth certificate. So what we decided at that point was we would explore the option for adoption. The background is that I'm adopted from birth. I was given an amazing opportunity that, wouldn't be here today if I wasn't adopted. And I grew up in a family, my brother and my sister were also adopted, both from different parents. So that was my world. It was also a positive part of my story. That my parents always shared, always was celebrated, and I'm really proud of. So that was like a calling, I suppose. So we went down that path, and at the time, Child Youth Family Services said, well, if you go through this process, it's totally cool for same-gender couples. That was legal. There wasn't an issue there. But just be aware that adoption is really limited in New Zealand. There are very few adoptions. So when you go through this process, we encourage you to think about what we could call Home for Life. And essentially, that was the new brand for permanent foster care. So what they advised us was the pathway, training, references, background checks, all of that process is identical. And then at the end, basically you get spat into two groups. The group up for adoption where the mother chooses, that's their decision. And then the group for Home for Life where the state chooses. And they sort of said, look, the reality is you've got a higher chance of getting a permanent foster kid. There's thousands of kids who need homes. So let's keep our options open. So that was the pathway that we took.
I'm intrigued that, because like you were saying, it was a different landscape. So I am a little bit intrigued and surprised that it was seen as completely acceptable for two men to go through the permanent foster care pathway. I maybe wrongly have had a view that maybe it wouldn't have been as accepted. So when you put in your application, they were just like, yep, treated you like anybody else coming through.
Well, I mean, look, I think let's be frank. We are white cis gay men. We're
There's
both
a bit of
educated.
There.
There's a lot of privilege. So we hold the most privilege within our rainbow communities. I think it's important to acknowledge that. I was a senior HR professional at the time. I was working for Coca-Cola. Mike was a senior education professional. So we would walk into a room and we'd be like, this is what we're doing. This is what we expect. Unless you can explain why we can't, then it's happening. We were very much those guys. We very much still are. But yeah, it was interesting. So that was the case at the time, but we did hit a stumbling block, and it's a really funny story. So we went through the process, started the process, went through training, some reference checks with work and some home visits, and then we didn't hear anything for quite a few months. And we had contacted say, we haven't heard anything. Have we been approved? What's going on? It seems to be taking a while. The social worker at the time's like, we've actually lost your file.
Oh.
And we were like, that seems really odd. This is like really sensitive information.
Yeah.
How do you lose a file? And then we hadn't heard back from a while, and then we tried to contact and heard nothing and heard nothing. And we're like, this smells a bit fishy. At the time, Jacinda Ardern was our local MP we lived in Grey Lynn. She was our MP. So we reached out and said, hey, do you mind putting in a call for us? Because this thing's really weird. We're getting no response and there's no explanation. And it seems like they accepted us, and now they've trying to figure out a way to not accept a queer couple without saying they don't want to accept a queer couple. So guess what? Jacinda made a phone call and our file appeared.
Oh gosh, that's a little disheartening though, isn't it? That, you have to get the MP involved in order to...
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Jacinda Ardern obviously became our Prime Minister, and it's a really cute story because she actually checked in once we took our son into our home, and multiple times through his life actually then connected with him, even when she was with Prime Minister, and how he was doing, and remembered his name in the street, and it was actually really, really special, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, it was really, really nice into the story. What then happened is we actually got a phone call quite quickly after that. So after we were approved and the file was found, it was only a matter of months before we got the call.
Oh, right. But you never got an explanation as to what happened to this missing file? No, you just got back in the path and no one said anything.
We went back on and Jacinda said what's going on, and we got a phone call. Oh. So yeah, and that's a whirlwind for anyone who's adopted or fostered and knows what that's like. We got a phone call. I was at work. Mike was at work, and it was like, we've identified a child, and they're like, we need to meet, and we're like, well, when are we going to meet? And they're like, in the next 24 hours.
Wow, let's go. This is on.
And I was like, okay, this is challenging and confronting, but sure. I'd recently been promoted to the Chief People Officer at Coke, replacing my boss who had gone on parental leave. So I went to our MD and I was like, I got a phone call, and he's like, see you, bye. Call me when you need me.
How supportive, yeah.
Mike did the same. And then we said, cool, we're in, and then we met him the next day. We didn't meet. It's called it's a bit quirky. But basically we went to the park. We could see him play with the other siblings he was placed with. He was 4 at the time. And we were like, they said, you've got 24 hours now to make a decision.
But you didn't actually get a chance to meet and engage with him. You could only see him from afar.
From afar, and it was just that piece of, if you met and then he was confused and he didn't know, he knew that he was going to get a new family, but he had already been through multiple placements at the age of 4, so it could have been quite traumatic. So we were in at the beginning, nothing's changed, we're still in, yes, we're on, and then basically from that moment, it was a transition plan into our home. And so the first visit, I think he came, we met him, he came over and spent some time within the next week, and then within 3 weeks he had moved in full time.
Wow. Yeah. When you took that first phone call and met at the park, what was your expectations around how long Xavier would be with you? You said it's like the Home for Life sort of initiative. Was the expectation at that stage permanency, or
it was permanency?
Sure? Okay.
Yeah, so we had only agreed to permanency. The process was quite clear that it was permanency. However, there were legal risks. So for a period of time, he's still under the care and protection of Oranga Tamariki, as it's called now, until guardianship and parenting orders are filed with the family court, and then the family court judge then basically then issues you those. That can take some time, and so you're living in this period of, let's call it a trial period. It's not a trial period, it's just the way that the process, family court and the law works. But it's actually quite stressful because you're investing this time as this child's yours, that there's yours forever, there's no intention that they're not going to be there, but actually you might not end up with guardianship and parenting orders. Ours happened, I think, within the 18 months. Right. His siblings is another part of the story that were removed at the same time, got placed with another family. Theirs took quite a little bit. There was a little bit more complication, and their orders also looked different from his. So there was this really interesting dynamic around his situation and their situation in terms of access from the birth parents. Right. But yeah, we knew it was permanent. We expected it to be, and again, coming back to the privilege, like it's gonna be.
Yes.
And we've got a lawyer, and so
we're in this. We are committed. We want to build a home for life with this.
Well, family. I mean, at that juncture, I said to my boss, right, this situation, the kids, our son Xavier's moving in, and so he said, "What do you need? How much leave do you need? What can I do?" And at that time, our parental leave, we were quite progressive at Coke when it came to DNI. We were very well on the journey. But our parental leave policy was still gendered. Mother, father, wasn't about, primary caregiver and things. And we had a 6-week paid parental leave, KiwiSaver continuing, Southern Cross continuing, a lot of those policies that companies are still only putting in place. And so I said, technically, as permanent foster care, it's not covered, which now under law it is. And what's the deal? And he said, Marty, our commitment is to support parents. The policy is there to support parents. You're a parent, you get everything.
Oh, how awesome.
I
Yeah,
know.
how awesome
I
to
mean,
take that mental load off you that this part is covered. I'm seen equal
yeah.
here, and I've got their
And I'd
back. They've
only
got my
been
back.
in my chief people officer. I'd been in the business for about 2 years as a head of talent, but only been in that executive role for about 6 months, maybe. So that was a big step. And the other really amazing thing, so I had 6 weeks paid parental leave. I could use my annual leave as parents do. But then we had this incredible flexible return to work strategy for parents. I was the first queer parent to use it. As an executive, I worked 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, then 4 days a week, and then continued for 4 days a week for quite a period of time. And when I was on 4 days, I got full pay.
It's amazing. Yeah.
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 And even when you're earning good money like I was, the difference that makes in your world is beyond even explaining. The loyalty to Coke, to my boss that I had, and the support I got from my team. My husband, on the other hand, he worked for the state. He was a deputy principal at a public school. They provided him flexibility, time off initially, but then he had to take 12 months unpaid parental leave. But they still did that, which was incredible.
Yes, to open that up.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And from what I know, it was a challenging start, right? And has continued to be a challenging story. So that
Yeah.
flexibility was really, really important. So can we talk about that a little bit more? What
Yeah.
sort of did you know about Xavier when he joined your whānau? You said he was 4, and how did those early days go? How was this
Yeah.
settling period?
I think, for anyone else listening who wants to explore this, I think, nothing can prepare you for parenting. Let's be honest. Nothing prepares you for no sleep and your whole life changing and priorities changing. But, parents would also not change it, wouldn't change it for anything. But a little person coming into your life that's had 4 years of a challenging start, no matter what's written on paper, no matter what the experts say, no one really knows. There's a lot of unknowns. He came with an assessment which was very confronting. And I suppose, to use the words when the family court judge issued our parenting and guardianship orders, he said that, what you're doing is incredible. This is one of the most complex cases I've ever seen as a family court judge for 30 years. And as per the paperwork, that he's been deemed a basket case. And the prognosis for him was pretty awful. He had orangutan-like behaviors, quote unquote. He had a lot of issues around trauma, around sensory disorders, around socializing, and essentially had been, in short, both witness to situations with his birth parents that were very, very tragic and extreme, but also then was experienced trauma and severe neglect. So you can imagine, right, the first 1 year, but then 4 years. And then in the last about 18 months before he was placed with us, he had gone through multiple homes where he had also experienced trauma and neglect as well. And he was too challenging for people to commit to. So finding that permanent home for him was really, really key. The challenge that we had was that at the time, Oranga Tamariki had committed to providing lifelong supports and supporting us. What we found really early on is there is no support. There aren't real specialists who understand. And his level of comorbidities were a challenge for all the professionals working with him. Oranga Tamariki have a specialist unit. The psychiatrists and psychologists initially that worked with him were phenomenal. Like, absolute legends. And luckily, one of them remained in his life for a long period of time and came back in at a further assessment stage, which was quite good. They did play therapy regularly, and a whole lot of socializing therapy and really working with him. But again, they'd been experts in this field for decades, and they were saying that this is one of the hardest cases that they'd ever had. So they could only do so much.
Yeah. And then here comes you and your husband with not a background in child psychology, I imagine.
Luckily, my husband was a teacher and an education expert, but still, he worked with high school kids and special needs, but not at this level and not in that real early stages.
So it was a
Yeah.
huge thing to take on,
Mm. Yeah.
and to know that this is going to be for a long period of your life working with these complex
Yeah.
issues. It's amazing.
Totally. And I mean, and the psychologists and psychiatrists at the time were like, this is lifelong. There will be some things that'll improve and some things that'll remain, and we don't know. So you've got to, step by step, um, day by day. It was literally day by day. His needs were high and complex. The wraparound, the care, it was intense. And what they kind of kindly called us was professional parents, is that you literally have to be a professional parent.
Mm.
And luckily, my husband essentially he never went back to his job. He was lucky that he could be at home as a stay-at-home dad. And he's essentially only ever worked part-time and little side hustle since, because our son still required that care, that advocacy, and managing all the specialists. And he still has wide-ranging specialists involved in his life. Now we understand and have diagnoses for everything. It makes it easier. Um, but that's a lot of wraparound that people didn't really get. Like, he's now officially clinically diagnosed as intellectually disabled. He's officially diagnosed as autistic. He's officially diagnosed as having complex post-traumatic stress disorder. He's officially diagnosed as having social disorders and sensory processing disorders and all of those things. But we eventually had to go private and pay privately outside of the state system because we just weren't getting the answers that we needed for him.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. I know you've
Yeah.
mentioned this before, that Oranga Tamariki sort of made these promises. The Home for Life initiative made promises about being there for the life of this whānau and to support not just the transition in the early days, but forever. And that wasn't your experience, was it? Like
No,
you've
it
been let
hasn't been.
down by OT.
I think to say he's been let down.
Mm.
He's the person that needed the care. He's got the love, he's got the safety, he's got stability, he's got the staunchest advocates you'd ever find, and particularly my husband, who advocates for him every day, fights the system for him, and they've let him down. And so many kids in care don't have us. They don't have professional parents with our background, our education, and financial stability that we also had, which means that these kids are exposed. They often, multiple placements, families collapse, marriages collapse. There are many people in our life, including his siblings, foster parents, who have had massive financial back steps, downgrading, selling their homes, moving different suburbs because they can't work. They don't have the resources. So huge letdown. Eventually, it got to the point where we took the crown on, which is not an easy task. And you can't do it through the legal system. Oranga Tamariki are protected by their own legislation. So it was through the Ombudsman's office. And after 2 years of extensive investigation, everything we put in front of the Ombudsman was found in our favour, in his favour. And finally, this year, Xavier and our family have received a formal apology from the Commissioner against every single finding in terms of the lack of service, the lack of care, the lack of funding, the neglect, the abuse, all of that. So, but it doesn't really mean anything because we had to get through all of those years, which was like going to hell and back.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Without who you would think they're the specialists. They're not. They're not. They don't. It's not what they do. And so, that I think it's about anyone going down this pathway is being aware of that, thinking about your supports, your financial situation, your ability to advocate, your mental resilience, your relationship resilience, because that
puts a strain on the marriage and or your
children
your
put a strain on marriages.
Yeah, they do.
This is like that next level. So yeah, I think going on. Could I recommend it? 100%. Would I change it? Absolutely not. But not without being really, really, really clear about what you're getting into. And it's certainly not for everyone.
Such a big thing to take on. I'm really surprised about you saying that you got this sort of meeting in the park where you saw him from afar, and then you had this assessment, I presume, in writing, and that was the information you had to go off, and
Yep.
that was it. Like, it's a huge decision to make because, like you're saying, you're committed to life. You're committed to provide that stability that this child needs forever, and you're doing it on quite limited information.
Yeah. And adoption's really different, right? Because At adoption happens at birth. And the child is basically placed with a family within the first 2 weeks. So there's unless there's fetal alcohol involved, which obviously could be the case, and there's still suspected fetal alcohol in the case of our child, but there's no evidence to prove, and you need the mother has to confirm that in fact there was involved, and she's always denied that. Um, but in the case of adoption, that could be the case. And there's obviously lots of other things that can happen with typical children who end up being diagnosed as neurodivergent and all of those things. But you don't get those other layers of trauma and neglect and abuse and things that happen in a foster situation. So adoption's going to be neater. There's still going to be a framework called attachment. So there's an idea of a different attachment, and children who've been adopted still may have attachment disorders. Like myself, I have sort of a really interesting sense of attachment in terms of relationships, and a very strong need for independence and control and autonomy, and really don't have a need for people. I'm very much like, I don't need you.
I can do my own thing.
So even children who are adopted, even though it's in that initial period, they can still experience that. So I relate to that, understand that, but definitely not the same at all, because essentially that child's grown as yours right from pretty much day one. I mean, I was adopted right from birth, within 2 weeks, I think, before I was actually placed with my forever family. So, and I think that's pretty much still the same. It's the same law that's in place today. I think the law's been in place since 1969. I'm a 70s baby, so yeah.
But like you said, those early 2-week adoptions don't happen very often in New Zealand. It is really
I think there's only between 30 and 40 now.
Wow, yeah, it's really not that many.
Yeah. And of course, they and as should be looking at whānau, should looking at whāngai relationships, and extended family in the first instance, and of course that makes total sense, right? But once those possibilities are exhausted, then that pool becomes really, really small.
Yeah, so that is the policy and underlying principle, isn't it, that Oranga Tamariki works off, is trying to, family reunification, I think they call it, trying to keep children with their original whānau. So what does that mean for whānau dynamics for you guys now? Like, does Xavier still have relationships with his birth parents? And you mentioned he has siblings as well that obviously are in different home. What does the whānau dynamic look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's just a whole different world. So when he was placed with us, he had two birth siblings to the same birth parents. They were separated because Xavier's needs were so complex that they couldn't find a family that could care for him and the other two. So that gives a bit of a sense, even in those early days. Luckily for us, his siblings were placed with an amazing couple that have effectively become part of our family, and auntie and uncle. They were on the same program as us through the same courses and things, so we met them. They have both of his siblings, one's a year younger, the other one's 2 years younger. They have trauma, they've still witnessed things that people in their lives would never witness. But we maintained that relationship with them from the get-go. And we all made a commitment that our job together was to keep their relationship as siblings, so that when they were old enough, they would be able to continue that however they see fit. They now have Xavier's brother comes to sleepovers by himself. Xavier, they go to the shopping mall together, they hang out together, they do things. Xavier's now, the older, so he's older. He's got this big brother kind of thing. His other two siblings are doing really, really well. Because of they were a lot younger. His little brother was removed when he was 1. You can see how that plays out. So they've, like, his sister's finishing year 13 at school. His brother's in year 11 doing quite well. They participate in sports and a whole lot of things. And they do have challenges where Xavier wasn't ever able to cope at school. He made it 3 months in year 9, third form, and that was it. His school career was over through the public system. They just could not meet his needs. So he had to go through specialist schools and wraparound services and things. So bit different, but great family, really connected. He then has 4 other brothers to so his birth mother had 4 other sons to a new partner. Their family's thriving, and Xavier for the first time met his birth mother again about 3 years ago, and seen her maybe once or twice a year. That's been a really nice connect, supported by my husband, and that just kind of, I always say, if you're adopted or come from a background where you don't live with your blood relatives, it's like a jigsaw puzzle and there's a piece missing. So most of the puzzle makes sense, but there's a piece or two that never makes sense.
Mm.
And when I met my birth mother at the age of 27, the puzzle was complete. The picture made sense. And for Xavier, that seems to be what has happened too. He's met her, they've chatted, there's a connect, but they're not going to have a deep relationship. And she's also moved on. She had him at the age of 16. She experienced immense challenges in that situation. And she's got a new partner and husband and 4 beautiful boys. And so I think what we hope is that Xavier will end up being able to develop a relationship when they're older, because they're all a lot younger, right?
Yeah.
But really sweet, because Xavier used to be into Lego, and last Christmas he did this massive box of thousands of dollars of Lego and like delivered that for his brothers and stuff. So that's nice.
That's
so
lovely,
I think
yeah.
there's going to be this big extended whānau as they mature and grow up, and they'll navigate that. But I kind of think like it's essentially like cousins.
Yeah.
Then on the other side, Mike's family, he's got 3 siblings. They've all got kids, and a lot of them are similar age. So he's just part of that group. Also really challenging, because as he was growing up, he had lots of complex needs, and the other kids couldn't really manage that. But those relationships are kind of forming as they're all getting older. And then on my side of the family, I've got only 1 sibling still alive, and my sister's got 2 kids, and they're the same age as well. And so they're cousins, and they've got a cool thing. And like last year, we took my nephew sailing in Italy with Xavier, and they're good mates and they hang out. So he's got like a pretty typical extended family.
Yeah.
In many respects.
It actually
But
sounds like a huge extended family, like a beautiful, like so many layers of support and whānau around him, that there's so many people he could go to at any point for any need.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing now is we've given him that opportunity that he can navigate those relationships. He can figure out the ones, and he's kind of got almost this. It is whānau. It's not the concept of family as a nuclear family, right? And I think if you're adopted or come into a foster world, it's very much that. So if you're going to go through this queer parenting pathway, which is incredible and really enriching and really fulfilling, you've got to shift your idea of family to whānau. You've got to shift ideas of relationships and who's going to be there to look quite different.
Yeah,
And I
couldn't
think
agree
I
with
said
you
to
more
you,
that nuclear family is not the only way. In fact, it's
no,
maybe not even the predominant way anymore. If like learning from this podcast, there's so many people that I'm talking to who the family does not look like. I mean, it certainly doesn't look like husband, wife, 2.5 kids in a minivan anymore. But it just is so much more diverse than that.
And I suppose it's that idea within our queer world of the chosen family, right? And that often the closest people to us are not blood; they're actually friends or other people in our lives. And I think going into creating your own queer family, no matter what beautiful pathway that you take, it's going to be that, because it is a different dynamic, because it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would also want to pause here and say, you and Mike have done such a fantastic job so early on that you obviously made a conscious decision to keep those relationships open with Xavier's siblings and his birth parents, like not to close them off, to keep them open, so that, sure, he didn't have really any comprehension of what that meant at 6 years old or 8 years old, but now he's 18, and like you said, you've given him the option to explore those relationships if he so chooses. But you could have made a different decision when he was 4, 5, 6, and then that path would be harder, would be more closed. So, that's a tremendous thing to take on, but a really important decision.
Totally. And I mean, everyone would have seen things on TV about, people who find out that they're adopted when they're 30, and the resentment and hate and the lack of trust with their parents. And I come from that generation where I had friends at school who the adoption thing was seen as like, they were castaways or didn't want it. In my family, we grew up with books, early days, like Rainbow Storytime, but adoption storytime, and it was positive. And I loved that about my identity, that I had this other life that I could explore, and it was always open from day one. The most important thing I say has been honesty all the way. Of course, they're like sensitive topics that often we get asked about, but yes, we talk about penises and vaginas, and yes, we talk about relationships outside of, our traditional heteronormative ideas, and, yes, boys kiss boys and girls kiss girls, and people are also non-binary and genderqueer, and these things, like we've always had this really open dynamic at the dinner table and talking about these things. And you know what? There's no resentment. Xavier is caring, he's kind, he trusts us, he feels safe with us, he feels protected by us, and enabled. Our job is not to control him. Your job as a parent isn't to control, but to provide that safety and opportunity and enough guardrails as much as you can so that he can give the best opportunities possible in his life. And his life opportunities are very restricted as an intellectually disabled person, but he's thriving within that realm of what he can do.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, I don't think it was ever an option to be half in. Lots of people have said to us along the way, why don't you give up? Why do you do this? And you're like, it's not even, I don't even understand. Like, would you give up on your own biological child? What does that even look like?
Mm.
And of course, some people do, right? For a lot of reasons. And I'm not judging. Everyone has their own cup that overflows for whatever reason, our own resilience. I think, if nothing else, my husband and I have been immensely resilient, and our relationship 30 years on is so strong and thriving, and we've invested heavily in that. But also, I think we're kind of maybe we're a bit lucky. Our story is a bit funny, a bit quirky, because in a way it's a bit of a demisexual rather than gay story. And that, we were best mates. We met at university through Mike's sister. We were sort of best friends for a couple of years, and then we decided one day that we would make it a little bit more than that, spontaneously on my 19th birthday after a little bit too much to drink, and then 30 years later we're still together. We're best mates. We love each other. We're partners. And we created our, first home together, our first car together, our first, all of those things. And so in a way, we're quite fortunate, because that is the world we know. We were together from being so young.
Yeah, I obviously know you more professionally than
Yeah.
personally through your work with Pride Pledge, which I am keen to talk about at some
Yeah.
point. But I know you as a super passionate individual, super, clear communication, putting communication as one of your key values. And I can hear that in your story translate to both your relationship with Mike, but also your relationship as a whānau with Xavier, as well, as those being sort of like the values and pillars of your life. And because of those values, because of your passion, because of your advocacy, because of your communication, your family is thriving, like you said, which is, it's really lovely to see.
Yeah, and there's another whole dynamic, and we haven't even talked about this. But for interest's sake, I mean, Xavier's birth family, one side was European Pākehā, the other side's Fijian, and Fijian Melanesian more, so quite dark. So his brother's really, 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 really dark. Most people would probably say he's black, but from a Kiwi perspective, he's kind of dark brown. Xavier looks like a big Pacific person. He's 6'4" and 120 kilos. I'm 5 foot, not much, as you know, and 70 something kilos. He's like literally twice my size. He was taller and bigger than me when he was 11.
Yeah, right.
And there's two sides. One was that was extremely challenging around explosive behaviors, which was really difficult to navigate until the last couple of years. But it was also really funny, because we had this big Pacifica boy who was ours, we were proud of, and these two white guys, and people were like, how does that work? How does that? And you're like, don't even try and figure it out.
Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, what kind of language and how do you talk about your family to other people? Like when you're, talking about your family at work, or, meet someone at the park, or...
Just like I did with you.
Yeah.
We're dads, we've got an 18-year-old son, our son Xavier, boom, I mean, again, really privileged. I've always been out. I've been out in every job. I've had a couple of moments in my career, or in an instance, where there's some person who asks me something, and I'm like, I can't be bothered having the conversation with you. I'm not even going to give you the time of day that you've asked me about my wife. Very few instances over my time, and it was just literally like, I'm not going to invest the energy because I've used all my queer energy for the day. But 99.999% of the time we're out, proud, loud, and this is who we are, take it or leave it. So that's how we talk about it. This is our family, this is our son, this is who we are. And you can see people trying to calculate how it all works.
But that's up to them to do the calculation. I've shared my story. I've explained, to you who we are and who our whānau is. And your reaction to that isn't my business, to be honest. That's all you.
Do you know, it's been really interesting and just thinking about the Pride space, and obviously I run Pride, well, we do, we're a queer family business. My husband works with me. That's his little part-time job. I'm the front of it, but 7 years now we've been doing this work, which is incredible. And as part of that, we used to run the Winter Pride Festival in Queenstown and the Rainbow Excellence Awards. With Winter Pride, there were a lot of parties and a lot of events. Obviously, our job was to bring that all together. And people then had this expectation that we would go to all these events and always be out and about. And I say to people all the time, you know that we're parents. And they're like, you didn't go to this party last night. And why weren't you out? And why do you leave early? I'm like, I'm a parent. People are like, what? And the initial thing is, I just thought you're a cis white gay guy. And cis white gay guys go to parties and that's what you do. And I'm like, no, actually, we're a parent. They're like, well, why don't you get a babysitter? I'm like, because he's got high and complex needs. There are very few specialist babysitters that we can leave him with. And also, by the way, when you're a parent, one day, do you know how much it costs to get a babysitter?
Yeah.
And then get an Uber? So
Yeah.
we're like, it cost us $200 before we left the front door. And they're like, oh, that's been a really exhausting conversation for us as queer parents, actually. Having to actually go, can you first step back about your judgment and who we are? And also, and because we're not just that. We're not one-dimensional. There's a whole lot more going on. And quite frankly, we're bloody exhausted. So
Yeah.
I don't know if have you been on a date night yet?
We haven't, because like you, it's $200 to walk out the front door, and it's just too much to overcome.
So when you
and
do,
we're
I
exhausted
remember
by
the
8 p.m.
first date night, like we were living in, well, we've kind of always lived in Ponsonby, Greyland. We're now really, really lucky. We moved to St. Mary's Bay. That's another story. Actually, with the setup that works for Xavier independently in a self-contained apartment in our property,
cool.
which is amazing for his age. But I remember going to Prego, was our little local that he used to like to go for pizzas and things. And we have it's actually called every year on the 16th of January. Oh, so on that note, when we got the phone call, it was Christmas Eve.
Wow.
That you're getting a child. And I was like, it's Christmas Eve. How does this work? He then moved in, I think it was the 16th of January. It was a Wednesday. So every year on the Wednesday, we have a family anniversary. We go to Prego for dinner and pizza.
Awesome. Yeah.
I remember the first time we went, we were there, had like 2 beers, had a pizza, and it was 7 o'clock, and we were like, we're ready to go home. And we booked the babysitter till 10. And we were like, how long could we hold this up? Had another drink, messaged her, and we're like, it's 8 o'clock, we're coming home.
I'm so sorry, but we're exhausted. Like, we need to
be
in bed.
It was that same story, right? And it's like, that's okay. So then it's just, you just want to get out the house, have some adult time, but you're just too tired to do it. So anyway, funny.
We're certainly in that season of life as well. You've mentioned Pride Pledge already, and just to sort of deviate away from your individual story for a little bit. So obviously Pride Pledge is working with organisations and individuals to affirm their commitment to make their workplaces and their organisations safe and inclusive for our rainbow communities. What are you seeing from a work perspective in terms of how these organisations are dealing with rainbow families and treating rainbow families?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question. So the ongoing shift has been around getting more strategic and really like moving beyond, as we would like refer to the Pride Parades and the Rainbow Cupcake days, right? So it's been moving to policy, to training, to strategy, and really that deep level. And so that's really exciting in Aotearoa. And we're working with the biggest brands, organisations, Fonterra in New Zealand, Chorus, ASB, you name it. And we continue to grow even through these really challenging geopolitical times, slower, but still growing. And part of what we do is we've got a stock take. So it does an assessment of all your policy systems, programs, practices, ensuring that they're inclusive of all identities and genders. And as part of that, we do a review. So parental leave policies, benefit policies, any other global travel policies, really ensuring that they're all inclusive, gender non-specific, and that all families of all makeups are celebrated and included. And it's changing really, 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 really fast. The great thing, and you'll know this and as a lawyer, is, well, once we get these things into policy, they get really hard to change. And that's what we want to see. So sustainable, long-term policy change, so that when I leave or you leave an organisation, the next person who picks up the job, it's already there. It's not like, oh, we're going to wind this back and make our parental leave policy about hetero couples only. Well, I mean, obviously in New Zealand, the law doesn't provide for that, but our policies can go further. So one of the cool things we've seen is parental leave policies are becoming really, really progressive around the types of support. So keep paying KiwiSaver on leave, additional paid leave, flexible to return work plans, paying travel insurance, or access to the company car or cell phone, and just these things that address, as you know, pay equity, particularly for the primary caregiver, which typically still is a woman, but not always. That really excites us because we know that'll live on to the next generation when Pride Pledge maybe isn't needed.
Yeah, and I love that when you say like making it into a policy is harder, because I think we have seen in the past, and I've certainly heard of, you've probably heard of organisations that take exceptions. So if someone individually comes to them with a unique case or a case that doesn't fit the parental leave policy, and the organisation makes an exception. Now that's great for that individual family who's now received support, but it doesn't actually move the needle for everybody else, and it doesn't help others who are sitting in that organisation saying, I would like to be a parent one day. I don't know what path I'm going to take to do that.
Correct.
But what are my options? This leave policy doesn't apply to me at all. And I don't want to be an exception. I want to be an accepted norm.
I remember at Coke, a young queer woman, after I'd been on parental leave, approached me and said, Marty, just want to say thank you for role modeling and being the leader that you are. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, my wife and I are thinking about having children, but I was thinking of leaving Coke and finding an organisation that I think one would be okay to be out as a queer parent, but two, that would have a policy. And one, you've done it and you've led the way, but two, the policies, we immediately changed the policy. I'm like to my team, we just need to fix it. It's not about me. We just weren't aware that it was an issue. So I think we're seeing organizations just be more proactive rather than reactive with that stuff. And despite all the noise globally and the anti-woke brigade, I honestly, every single day am working with clients that are making the, I mean, I was with Port of Auckland yesterday with their executive team. I was with a big engineering firm on Tuesday with their executive team, all shifting these things that they can impact. It's pretty incredible. And I think if I fast forward to 10 years' time, our vision at Pride Pledge was to create the safest, most welcoming, inclusive organisations in the world for rainbow communities here in Aotearoa, and that's still our vision. I honestly think that in 10 years' time, we're going to look back and go, wow, what have we achieved? And I think it's nice to remind ourselves, amongst so much noise we see on social media, because I'm in the trenches every day with clients are doing this work.
Yeah, love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I am conscious of time and I do want to let you go, but I've got two final sort of questions. One, just coming back to sort of the legal challenges that you faced with Xavier and forming your whānau, particularly in the eyes of the law. So what did that look like in terms of parenting orders, and when did that come, and how difficult was that? Like, are you your legal parents at this point, or is it
so we have parenting orders and guardianship orders. So because of adoption, the Adoption Act is separate. So under Adoption Act, you would be on the birth certificate, and that would all happen really, really quickly. Under the Home for Life, permanent foster care, the guardianship and parenting orders are the closest legal protections you can have. As part of that, we were able to change his surname, so he has my surname, which makes things a lot easier. If you've ever been through a name change process at all, his it's not a dead name, because what we did is we made his surname assigned at birth his middle name. So he's
still
got
part of his identity.
Yes, and funny enough, his middle name was Michael, which is my husband's name. So his so he's kind of got a blend.
Yes, lovely.
So we were able to do that. That was really nice. That gave him a really strong sense of connectedness to us and his name. It's also quite a cool name. And then that, to be fair, that was largely guided by Oranga Tamariki. It's a standard process and timeframe. We had to have a family lawyer. Luckily, my sister-in-law had a really good friend who was an amazing family lawyer. She came on board with us and she kind of stayed with us. So get a good family lawyer, have someone that you really trust, that knows the system, how to work that. And with a view, again, you're going to have someone permanently involved. Our solicitor that had sort of traditionally done conveyancing with and other things with our trusts and so forth, she's also been our lawyer that whole time. She's supported us through a whole lot of things in terms of how we include Xavier into our wills and our trust, and how, because of his needs, how we set up a trust when we go to that. He's got trustees that can care for him.
Yeah,
like his needs are going to be lifelong. When we pass, there'll be a significant amount of asset wealth that he could just have access to and it would just not be managed. So she's been amazing that whole time, and recently even worked with us around powers of attorney that he's now given us so that we can manage as an adult. He's got his own bank account. He's on what they call, it's terrible, the invalid's benefit, but it's a disability benefit. He now has a full-time disability benefit because he can't work. So we're able to then, I can manage MSD, I can manage his bank account, I can manage all of those things. So she's been there for 20 years with us, and that is really, really nice. So find people like that. You don't want to be chopping and changing lawyers who don't understand, and super queer inclusive.
Yes, yeah.
Like, they get us, respect us, value us. It's always about, how are you guys? How's your relationship? How's the family? It's pretty special.
They've always seen you as a full whānau and, seen your queerness and welcomed you with open arms.
Yeah, totally. And not bringing a heteronormative lens to the way that we structure things or things would look like. That's been pretty awesome. And I think those people, I mean, of course, they're all out there, and there's also lots of queer lawyers and queer-friendly lawyers, but also there's the opposite. So find those people early and get them aligned and make sure you've got them as lifelong partners.
Yeah. And final question, when you think back to the early days, when you think back to you and Mike as younger folks about to embark this journey, or people might be listening who are thinking about this pathway to growing their family, what's your advice to them?
I think to your question earlier, 100% commitment. Once you're in, you're in. There's no turning back. 100% confidence in your relationship and resilience in your relationship. And I've seen this with, lots of people in our lives. You've got to be values aligned on everything. Once you've got a child, particularly with complex needs, there is no negotiating values about basic things like, for instance, in the old days, hitting your children or not. That's not a conversation. Who's doing bedtime, bath time, and story time. One of the things, I was really, really lucky. Coke is an incredible employer, and I obviously was head of HR. 6:30, family dinner time. I had to travel a lot, but maybe once every 2 weeks I might have been away for 2 days. But when we were in Auckland, it was 6:30 family dinner time, no negotiation, you get home.
Yeah, you were home, the phone was off, you were
Those things were non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Bedtime, story time, bath time. This is our time. It's special time. You don't get those moments back, so cherish them.
I had a particularly hard bath and bedtime last night, so I'll try and take that on board.
Don't cry on me. It's hard, right? It's hard. Financial resilience, and this is potentially comes across the wrong way. For us, if we weren't in a financial situation that we were in, we would have been destroyed. Yeah. I mean, Mike has literally taken, so nearly 15 years. He's only ever worked part-time. I running our little social enterprise now. I mean, I don't even earn what I was earning more than 15 years ago. So our whole financial situation changed, but we went into it with, owning our home, having a really, really sorted ourselves in terms of being robust and not being really financially stretched. We've gone through periods where we've had to renegotiate that, but being really, really resilient and strong. I think being really, really clear about what supports are there and what might not be there, and being really honest with the reality of people that might not be able to support. In our case, it was not through desire. It was the lack of family actually being able to provide the care because of his complex needs. They just couldn't. It's not that they didn't want to, they just couldn't. My mum, really early, she's a phenomenon and the most amazing woman. She raised 3 adopted kids herself. There's not a question at all about that. It got really difficult physically. She's really small. He was really big. He had lots of issues around his aggression and violence and outbursts, and it just got unsafe. So she couldn't look after him by himself anymore. So, those things, be really realistic, be honest. Have these really, really robust conversations. It's parenting is the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. It's also the most challenging. It makes work seem like a walk in the park. You'll know that when you go back. And sadly, not everyone will be there for you. And I think we did definitely have a situation where I think our queerness added a layer of dimension around the support that we didn't get when we needed it. And took many years to rebuild some relationships with our family that we had to say, unless you cross this bridge with our family and the way we are and accept us, we can't actually have a relationship with you. And those relationships are not ever like they used to be. And I don't want to go into the detail, but that was really difficult. So, and was it queerness? Was it not blood? It was probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. But like I said before, I know you professionally as a huge advocate, a staunch advocate, someone who's constantly advocating and pushing for change in organizations. If you bring even a half or a teaspoon of that I see professionally into your personal whānau to advocate for your family, like that's a lucky family, and it's certainly a lucky Xavier, certainly a lucky kid.
Yeah, well, look, he's doing so well. So proud he got his license. He's got his first car. He's got his own little self-contained apartment under our house, which is great, and he loves it. He's got a couple of really close friends. One of his best friend, they met the first year of primary school, and they're still friends to this day from Richmond Road Primary in Grey Lynn, and he lives around the corner. It's pretty special. He's also got gay dads, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So that's normal in our world.
Yeah.
And there's so much going right. So yeah, we are going to have to provide support and wrap around his whole life. But it looks really positive and really exciting for his future. The best thing now is one of the things that he identified last year, because we've traveled a lot globally. I was in a global HR job, and he got to be in Paris and New York and London and Barcelona, and Mike was a full-time dad, so we could travel. And he, with his autism, it's a lot. Autistic people struggle with travel, and he last year said, I don't like travel, it's not my thing. I love being at home, I love my friends, I love my apartment, my routine. And so this year we're like, it's our year of travel, so we're like, cool. And he's able to be left at home. We have a caregiver who stays upstairs and just is there for him if he needs, and checks on him every day. And it's a really beautiful little situation. So we finally able to get back on planes and go and do cool stuff that we do, which is snowboarding, hiking, and sailing. We're also sailors as well. So we're about to head off to Turkey in a week and a half for 2 weeks sailing. So pretty exciting.
Oh, that sounds energetic. Like I said, I had a hard bedtime and a hard night. So that all sounds a little bit too energetic for me right now.
We're active relaxers.
Yeah, that is definitely you, active relaxers.
Yeah.
Marty, thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I really appreciate how open and honest and real you've been with the challenges and all of the wonderful things about your whānau. So thank you for sharing with me, and kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Proud Conception. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider passing it on to someone you think might connect with it as well. Don't forget to follow the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And come hang out with us on socials. We're just getting started on Instagram. We're at Proud Conception Pod. Until next time, take care, and let's keep building a world where our little ones feel seen, safe, and proud.